What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik of the Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. And I want to talk about Canelo Alvarez backing out of the September 14th date. Uh, Obviously, that's a date that has meant something to Canelo, or at least that time period of the year has meant something to Canelo throughout most of his career, especially once he's risen to prominence. The reason why that date or that time frame is important is because as a Mexican fighter, as without a question the most popular Mexican fighter in the world today, it is right around Mexican Independence Day. So that is traditionally a time period when the top Mexican fighters will have a fight, a major fight on their schedule, as well as Cinco de Mayo, which in the first week of May. So Golden Boy released this statement today, and I'm going to talk about this statement. I'm going to read it to you. It's pretty short, and then I am going to kind of give you my thoughts on it, as well as I'm going to quote kind of like an honorary fight guy friend of the channel, Mike Coppinger of The Athletic. I'm going to quote something that he tweeted today too, or he tweeted on Wednesday that I feel kind of really. Mike is one thing. If you guys don't follow Mike on Twitter, you really should. And if you don't subscribe to The Athletic to get his boxing coverage, you're probably missing out, because the dude keeps it absolutely real, and he is the most legitimate source right now in the sport. But the statement that came from Golden Boy says, Golden Boy postpones Canelo fight. Golden Boy and Canelo Alvarez have made the strategic decision to postpone their typical September fight. The decision was made in an effort to secure the right opponent and to do justice to the level of promotion required for a boxing star of his magnitude. Though Canelo typically fights in May and September, it is not without precedent to fight later in the year, as Canelo did fight in December of 2018 in Madison Square Garden. Canelo's next fight will now take place later in 2019. This is a quote directly from Canelo. As a Mexican, it's a responsibility and an honor to represent my country in both May and September. Those are my dates. However, as a world champion in multiple weight classes, I also have the responsibility of delivering the most exciting and competitive fights possible. That's why Golden Boy and my team have decided to postpone the date in order to do right by my fans by promoting the best fight possible and with the best opponent possible. End quote. All right, so I'm going to hold back giving my thoughts for a second, and I'm going to tell you what my man Mike Coppinger said, because like I said, Cop's gonna keep it real all the time. He's gonna tell you what he thinks, right? So he basically took the same quote and tweeted it, and he posted, he said, "This isn't really true. Triple G was promised the trilogy fight September 14th, and the money wasn't an issue. Canelo doesn't like him and didn't want to fight. Sergey Kovalev was available, but the negotiations hit a roadblock." That's the end of Coppinger's tweet. So here's the thing. Golden Boy and Canelo are doing a lot of stuff that is, and you know, it's really difficult to know where some of these decisions begin or end as far as the fighter is concerned, right? So how much of it is his promoter, his management, whoever it is making some of these decisions? Because I don't doubt Canelo's heart for 1 second, right? Canelo's a fighter. Canelo is the type of dude who will get in there and he will fight the best fighters. I 100% believe that, right? Because to be totally honest with you, the Danny Jacobs fight wasn't a walkover kind of a fight. He didn't have to take that fight, and he took it. Now, he did have the little weight thing in there, the rehydration thing in there, to kind of level things out or pull things a little bit more in his favor. But hey, Floyd kind of got him with the same thing when they agreed to the catch weight that was, to put Canelo a little bit on a disadvantage. So it's the A side being the A side essentially. So, but what I'm seeing a lot with what Golden Boy is doing with Canelo is they're avoiding a lot of people. Derevyanchenko is the number one contender for the IBF title. According to their management, to his manager, they couldn't even get a response from Canelo to take the fight. It looks like Canelo is more apt to just give up the title. You know, he hasn't done it officially, but it seems like he's leaning that direction, right? So he was a WBC champion and apparently didn't want to fight the interim champion, Jermall Charlo, and instead kind of took a polite stripping or a polite relinquishing of the title by being elevated to a franchise champion so that Jermall Charlo could then be the world champion. So that's another fighter, right? Then we got the WBO champion. Now, I interviewed Canelo Alvarez before the Daniel Jacobs fight, and he flat told me that one of his goals, and you can see the interview or you can see some of the excerpts that I took from the interview. I wrote about it on Forbes. He flat told me, obviously through an interpreter, that his biggest goal was to win all of the belts at 160, right? And this was before, obviously, he had taken Danny Jacobs' title. So here we got Demetrius Andrade as the WBO champion, calling him out, undefeated, on the same network, just like Daniel Jacobs. But he, first of all, wouldn't even say Demetrius Andrade's name in the interview. Wouldn't even say his name. I said his name. He wouldn't even repeat it back. And said, yeah, I want to have all the titles by the end of the year. But Canelo, Andrade is called him out on an interview that we have on this very channel. Like, so we'll obviously make sure that the card pops up on the screen now so that you can see, you know, what I'm talking about in case you did not see that interview with Demetrius Andrade. Called him out, called him and Triple G out, and he, you know, Canelo's essentially acting like he doesn't exist. According to Cop, and I have every reason to believe what he's saying, there was a promise to Golovkin for September 14th, and Canelo's not, and his team's not gonna, you know, not gonna make good on that one either. So then you have to ask yourself, well, who is he gonna fight? You know, the Munguia fight was never going to be accepted by the Zone. The Zone was not going to even accept that fight at all. It would have been an easy victory. I think most people know for Canelo. I think I talked about that. It's the same thing with, you know, Munguia, Golovkin, which we could still see in September. Perhaps the Zone will take that because they would still have a prominent Mexican fighter fighting on the Independence Day holiday weekend. But this is another, you know, situation where, you know, this is going on. So you got to ask yourself what's going on with Canelo. Like, I know that the knee injury is probably a little bit more severe than what they're letting on. Obviously, there is some issue where he just flat doesn't like Golovkin and doesn't want to face him, deal with him anymore. He's already, you know, officially beaten him once, even though both fights, both the draw and the victory, are somewhat disputed. I actually scored the second fight for Canelo, and I scored the first fight a draw, so I had it pretty much what the judges had it, even though one of the judges' cards in the first fight was ridiculous. But I had it a draw. So I don't know. I really don't know what to make of what's going on with Canelo right now. I know that there was some talk, and like Coppinger kind of, you know, also spoke of, that he would fight Sergey Kovalev and move all the way up to 175 to fight Kovalev. Kovalev already had an agreement in place with Anthony Yard, who is his mandatory challenger. But apparently Yard was going to take some step aside money, which was going to be a significant fee for him to make way for Canelo and Kovalev to fight. But Kovalev didn't like the offer because he felt it was a lowball offer. So now here we go. We're getting closer and closer to September 14th. And so the part of the statement that I do agree with, or I do believe, is that they're saying that they needed ample time to promote the fight. And I kind of do think that that's the case, because all of their plans and not wanting to fight this guy, not wanting to fight that guy, having an idea of fighting one or two guys, all of those things kind of fell apart. So now you get so close to the date. Well, yeah, now you don't have ample time to properly promote the fight. But I think because they bottlenecked the competition pool, and I think that's more than likely what happened. So they're saying that he'll fight later in 2019, but I'm going to be honest, man. I don't want to see Canelo fight anybody with the outside of this group. Either Derevianchenko, which of course he's going to be favored to beat him, but it's a good fight. Kovalev, I mean, because he's moving up to 175. Callum Smith, who I don't think he wants any of that smoke. Callum Smith's a 6'3" power punching, legitimate 168 pounder. And I think that's the toughest fight, one of the toughest fights. It's between that one and this next one I'm going to mention. They're the toughest fights that I think that Canelo could have right now. Demetrius Andrade is the other one. So that fight, of course. I would love to see him fight Charlo, but I know there's no way in blue hell he's going to fight him because of the different networks. And I just don't think it's a fight that Canelo's people are enthused about him having. And then, honestly, my last resort, the least attractive fight for me personally to see Canelo have would be against Triple G. Like, I don't know what is going, like, some people try to draw a comparison of their rivalry to Pacquiao Marquez. And I think that's a bad comparison. Pacquiao Marquez fought wars. Leading up to the fourth fight that is the only one that ended with a finish. Obviously, the big one-punch knockout by Marquez. Leading up to that fight, all of those fights were still great fights with knockdowns and a bunch of action. Canelo and Triple G's first two fights were good fights, but they weren't on those level. I mean, Pacquiao Marquez won. Marquez got knocked down 3 times in the first round. And then gets up off the canvas and literally outboxes Pacquiao the rest of the way. It shouldn't have been a draw because Burt Clement didn't realize that he could score a 10-7 round. If he had scored it properly, Pacquiao wins or whatever. But it was a great fight. It was a great fight. Fantastic drama. I don't know that Canelo or Triple G's, the first two fights, ever got to that level. So I don't think it's a really accurate comparison. So I say that to say, I'm not sitting on the edge of my office chair trying to just in anticipation for Canelo Triple G3. I'm not. I'm just not. I mean, because what happens? Golovkin wins and then now they got to fight a fourth time. I mean, I think we know that that's what would happen. The only way we don't get a fourth fight is if Canelo wins and wins more definitively than he won, the second time. So I'm just not thrilled about it. Like I've said before, and I said in the previous video, the Charlo Andrade fight to me is the best fight to make it middleweight from a pure boxing fan standpoint. But when you obviously have to consider the commercial appeal and all of those different things. So then you got to think about, obviously, Canelo's got to be involved. But those fights that I mentioned, those are the ones I would prefer to see him have. If they come up with anybody else besides those guys, I don't know. I got to click off. I got to click off. I got to click the X because that's going to be, in my opinion, unacceptable. So we will see what happens. But for right now, September 14th is canceled for Canelo. He's supposed to fight later on this year. We will see which fighter is chosen to be the guy that he comes back and fights. I'm thinking it still might be Kovalev after he has his mandatory fight against Anthony Yard, and then maybe they meet like the statement said in December, which would be similar to what Canelo did when he fought Rocky Fielding, which was a horrible, just everything about it was horrible. So we'll see what happens. But I'm interested in knowing what you guys think. Hit up the comment section. Don't forget to leave a like. Like I said, we are doing work here at Fight Guys, coming through with this content, opinions, interviews, We're going to be working on a podcast that's coming shortly that will spawn segments throughout the week. So I'm excited about what we're doing. I hope you guys are too. If you are, subscribe and hit that notifications bell. As always, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.